it's Ariane. I am back with another video. In today's video, I really wanted to discuss a topic that is not commonly discussed in general in corporate America, and this is going to be 10 signs that it's time to quit your job. So, quitting your job may not necessarily be a bad thing, depending on the situation and depending on the environment, depending on where you see your future. Because when you're working, you want to make sure you're in a great environment. No one wants to be stressed out. No one wants to be unhappy or miserable. You don't want to feel tense at work. So if you're feeling any of those things, that's going to be a sign that it's time for you to quit. So I'm going to dive into 10 signs that it may be time for you to quit your job. When you realize that the career path that you are on does not align with where you see yourself in the future, that's going to be really a red flag that it's time for you to find a career that aligns better with what you want to see yourself doing in the future. A lot of times people take positions out of desperation. If you've been looking for a while for a job, you get a job offer, you may just accept it just so you can have steady income. But then you may later realize that this isn't the position that you want and this isn't where you really see your future headed. So if your current position does not align with where you see yourself in the future, then that's going to be a sign that it's time to leave. You don't want to waste your time working in a position that leads nowhere. If the position doesn't lead to where you see yourself in the future, it's essentially a waste of time. Next will be if the only opportunity for you to advance within a company is if someone gets fired or if someone quits, then that's going to be another sign that it's time for you to leave, because you're going to be waiting for the possibility to advance or the possibility for promotion based on someone else leaving the company. You want to be in charge of your own future. You don't want to have to wait for someone to quit or get fired in order for you to receive a promotion. That really just shows that the company does not have any movement. There's no opportunity. And again, that it's time for you to start looking for another job, because no one really wants to wait for someone to quit before you can get a promotion or advance or get more responsibility, right? I mean, everyone wants the equal opportunity to work their way up, get promoted, have lots of challenges in their work environment. But if that doesn't happen unless someone quits, you're never going to develop your career in a position like that. The next sign will be if you are overpaid. So it's easy to know if you're overpaid. If you've been with the company for a while and you make substantially more than your colleagues, then it's just a matter of time before the company lets you go. You'll either get promoted to a position to have more responsibility and you will have a small pay increase, or the company will let you go. Reason being is this: it may sound great. Oh, I'm overpaid for what I do. I make a lot of money. But when you really break that down, businesses don't operate like that. Businesses always look out for themselves. They want to make sure they get the greatest return on their investment. So if they could essentially pay someone else to do the same job you're doing for half the salary, then they would certainly do that. So some companies in some positions, you may get grandfathered in at a certain salary and your colleagues are now making substantially less than you. Again, it may sound great. Oh, I'm the highest paid, salesperson or whatever the position is. But at the end of the day, it's not really a good sign. It's just a matter of time before they're going to even out those costs. If they can pay someone half of your salary to do the same exact job, then they probably will. So that's how you know it's a sign that you should just start looking for another job. It's a sign that you should start looking for another job, something that also pays well, but is going to be in line with everyone else. You're not the outlier. You're not the only one making six figures if that's the case. So that is something to think about. So if you consistently have poor performance, that's another sign. Now, obviously, if you work in a sales position or a commission-based position where you're incentivized to sell and do well, no one wants to be an underperformer. But if you are trying your best and you just can't seem to perform at the metrics that they are holding you to, and when you have conversations with your manager or with your boss, they're not talking about ways to improve your performance, that's going to be a sign that it's time for you to start looking for another job. Because ultimately, companies want individuals to perform. So if you're not performing and they're not trying to help you get to where you need to be, or even move you into a position where you can be successful, something that may be a better fit for you, but they're not discussing this, again, it's time to go. The next sign is going to be something where you actually need to think about how you feel in the environment, or if it's very obvious that you feel this way, then that's going to be a sign that it's time to leave. But if you work in a toxic environment, so if you get to work every day, you tense up. If you're not happy to be at work and you tense up, you have to inhale, and you're just not comfortable in the environment, the work environment that you enter every day, you spend a lot of time at work. So no one wants to be miserable at work. So that's going to be a sign that it's just time for you to leave. If you just feel as if you're in a toxic work environment, the culture is just not what you would thrive in. And that's okay. Sometimes working in different environments, it kind of lets you know what you prefer, what your management style is, what work environment you prefer. So identifying these things can save you time, money, stress. It could just all around be better for you. So that's something to look out for as well. If you feel alienated at work, so if you do work in a team environment and you feel as though no matter what contribution you make to the team, it's never enough, you never feel recognized, that's going to be a sign that it's time for you to look elsewhere. If you're constantly feeling ignored, that no one appreciates the value you contribute to the team, no one likes to feel like that at work. No one likes to feel invisible or unappreciated. So keep that in mind. Next is if you're the fall guy for everything. So unfortunately, things go wrong at work. It's inevitable for things to happen at work, but if you're constantly being pitted for the issues that happen at work, you're constantly being blamed, you're the fall guy, then again, that's something to look out for. And so this is a big one. If you notice there is a one strike policy, now what I mean by that is this. Usually before any documentation happens for an incident happening, there's a verbal warning. If you never receive a verbal warning and you go straight to the documentation or straight to a write-up, that's going to be a sign that you're on the path out the door either way. Anytime your boss or your manager is starting a paper trail on you and it seems like it comes out of nowhere, that's an indication that they are pretty much making a case against you. So you have to be smart and really think about those things. It may seem like it's out of nowhere to you if you think everything is good and if you think you're in good standing, but that's a sign that you're not. And last but not least is if your boss or manager has to constantly make excuses for you, they're constantly explaining your behavior, they're constantly having to justify your actions. No one wants to feel like they have someone who's a burden to the company. So if someone's constantly explaining, oh, this is how Ariane communicates, so that's what this means. So this is how Ariane, this is her style, so this is her demeanor. If someone's constantly explaining why you are the way that you are, so in other words, you're misunderstood to everyone else, it's not a good sign. It just means your communication is not there. And it means that other employees or even managers are having conversations about you behind closed doors, and you may not know the full story, you may not know the full conversation, but those conversations are being had, and unfortunately that's never usually a good sign. Hopefully you do find these tips helpful. Hopefully you're never in a situation where you feel any of this, but if you do, this is going to be a clear indication that it's best just to move on. And as I stated before, it's okay to quit a job. There's a proper way to go about it. You never want to just barge in and just say I quit. And I have another video on how to properly quit a job that you hate, but you definitely want to remove yourself out of that environment. You don't want to stay in a stressful situation, because there are tons of companies to work for. I mean, there are tons of things to do that won't compromise your happiness. So at the end of the day, you have to look out for yourself. You want to be the best employee you can be, but if that fails, if that doesn't work out, it's okay. You can walk away and you can have a fresh start somewhere else, and just be aware of those signs and if they start to happen. So I will see you in the next video. If you have any comments, any questions, definitely leave them down below, and I will see you in the next one.